All right, everybody, ready to dive in. Today, we're tackling how to ace that hardware and paint specialist interview.
It's a competitive field, you know.
Absolutely. And we want to make sure you're not just prepared, but you really shine. We've got a ton of resources to help us out, career guides, those monster interview question banks, even some AI tools I'm excited to dig into.
Sounds like we're well equipped. Where shall we begin?
Let's start with a career guide. Get a sense of the job itself. It's more involved than some folks might think.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's not just about knowing where the duct tape is.
Right, not just pointing customers down an aisle.
You're a problem solver, a product expert, almost like a consultant in a way. The career guide really gets into that.
It's a role where you can see the impact, too. Like someone's finishing their dream project, and you helped make it happen.
Exactly. You're part of that. But like any customer-facing job, there are challenges.
Oh, for sure. Dealing with those, shall we say, colorful personalities can be tough.
That's putting it mildly. But that's where prepping for those interview questions is key.
All right, let's fire away. First up, tell us about your experience with hardware and paint products. Now, some folks listening might be thinking, wait, does my garage workbench count?
It absolutely does. Even if you haven't worked in a store, any relevant experience is fair game. Did you repaint your bathroom, refinish a piece of furniture?
Talk about it. Choosing the right type of paint, dealing with the prep work, that all counts.
Exactly. The key is to highlight transferable skills. You know, the career guide even had examples for different levels.
Oh, yeah, like a student could talk about their passion for, I don't know, restoring vintage tools, while someone with retail experience could talk about suggestive selling techniques.
It shows you've thought about how your background fits.
It's about showing you're not just looking for any job, you're looking for this job. All right, next question. How do you stay up to date with trends in hardware and paint?
This is where you show you're proactive. It's easy to say, oh, I browse the trade magazines.
But to really stand out, you got to get specific. I was looking through the career guide earlier, and they mentioned a huge demand for eco-friendly paints lately. Imagine if you said, I've been researching low VOC options, and the durability is impressive now.
Shows you're not just aware of trends, you're engaged with them. And that's something that later on we'll see how RoleCatcher, with its AI, can actually help with.
Right. We'll definitely circle back to that. But I love how it can suggest relevant trends to mention based on the job description. Okay, moving on to something every hardware and paint specialist faces, dealing with difficult customers. Two questions often come up here. How do you approach customer service in this specific role? And how do you handle those really tough customer interactions?
This is about more than just product knowledge. It's about navigating those human moments, sometimes under pressure.
Right. Grace under pressure is a good way to put it. The career guide made a good point, though, that every interaction is a chance to build a relationship. They even had an example of an employee turning a complaint into a positive loyalty-building moment.
Turning a negative into a win? That's impressive.
It takes skill. Speaking of skills, question 5. Have you ever had to troubleshoot a customer's problem with hardware or paint? And how did you resolve it? This is where thinking on your feet is key, right?
Absolutely. Even if you're newer to the field, think about your own projects. Remember that time you, I don't know, put together that grill with the instructions backwards?
Or used the wrong type of screw and had to get creative.
Those are all examples of problem solving.
Turning DIY mishaps into interview gold. And you know what else the career guide stressed? Using the STAR method for answers. Can you break that down for us?
Sure. So STAR, situation, task, action, result. It's about structuring your responses so they're clear and show impact. Instead of just saying, I'm good at customer service, you'd say,
Once a customer was completely lost in the paint aisle.
and they needed to match a very specific shade.
You're setting the scene.
I like it.
Then you describe what you did, the actions you took, and the positive outcome. Maybe you calmed them down, found the perfect match, made a sale. STAR makes it real for the interviewer.
And RoleCatcher can actually help with this too. It'll analyze your practice answers and suggest where to use the STAR method more effectively. We'll get into that more later.
It's like a personal interview coach powered by AI.
Very cool.
Okay, let's move on to those questions that are all about showcasing your sales abilities. How do you prioritize your sales goals? And tell us about a successful sales pitch you've made. What's tricky is, even if you haven't worked on commission, you can still demonstrate these skills.
Think about any time you had to persuade someone. Maybe you convinced your family to try that new recipe.
Or you've fundraised for a club and exceeded your goal. It's about showcasing that ability to set a target and smash it.
Exactly. And when it comes to the sales pitch question, don't be afraid to get creative. Maybe you helped a friend choose the perfect toolkit or convinced a neighbor to try a new type of fertilizer. It's about understanding needs and offering solutions. So even casual situations can become wins if you highlight the right things. Okay, two more questions before we wrap up this part of our interview prep. These focus on the bigger picture of the business. How do you build relationships with suppliers? And how do you approach cross-selling and upselling to customers?
This is where you show you understand that a hardware and paint specialist isn't an island. You're part of a system, working with suppliers, managing inventory, understanding the flow of the store.
It's like being a conductor, making sure all the parts work in harmony.
Exactly. So for the supplier question, you could talk about the importance of clear communication, maybe even negotiating better terms or early access to new products. Show you're business-minded.
And when it comes to cross-selling and upselling, it's not about being pushy. It's about
being a problem solver. Like, let's say a customer's buying a new lawnmower. A skilled hardware and paint specialist might ask,
do you need any new gardening gloves with that?
yeah,
Because we've got this amazing sale on right now.
You're not just selling gloves, you're anticipating their needs.
Okay, I'm already feeling more confident about this interview. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll continue to tackle these questions and explore how RoleCatcher can give you that extra edge. Stay tuned. And we are back, diving right back into those hardware and paint specialist interview questions. You know, we were talking about suppliers before the break. It's not something you'd think about right away, but it's important.
Absolutely. It shows you get the bigger picture. A hiring manager might ask, give me an example of how you built a strong relationship with a supplier.
Okay, I'm ready. Now, remembering that STAR method, how would we use that here?
Good point. You could say, in my last job, I noticed we kept running out of this one type of sealant really popular with contractors. You're setting the scene, showing there was a problem.
Got it. A hook. So what's the task?
Right. You could say, this was causing delays, frustrating customers, so I took it upon myself too.
Love it. You saw a problem and took action.
Exactly. And then you describe what you did. Maybe you talked to the supplier, worked out a bulk discount for consistent orders, even improved the store's profit margin a bit.
Oh, nice. Showing you're thinking about the bottom line.
And finally, the result. We never ran out again. Sales for that sealant went up 10% over the next quarter. Concrete details make all the difference.
They really do. Now, before I forget again, this is where RoleCatcher comes in handy. Their AI analyzes job descriptions and can pick out those keywords related to suppliers that your resume might be missing.
Subtle, but it can make you stand out.
Okay, back to those customer interactions. How do you walk that fine line between being helpful and being pushy when it comes to cross-selling?
It's all about how you frame it. Think solution-oriented. Instead of just pushing an extra product, you're anticipating their needs. Say a customer is buying a gallon of paint.
Picture it, I'm in the paint aisle.
Right. A good hardware and paint specialist might casually ask, doing any other rooms while you've got the brushes out?
It's not pushy, it's practical. You're basically a helpful friend at that point.
Exactly. You're not just selling paint, you're selling convenience. You could even suggest a color for an accent wall. Become a trusted advisor.
Speaking of which, what about when a customer asks you a question you just don't know the answer to? Like something hyper-specific about a type of bolt or something?
Happens to the best of us. It's about honesty and resourcefulness.
Remember the career guide said that sometimes, I don't know, but I'll find out, is the best answer.
It shows you're willing to go the extra mile. But in an interview, don't just say that. Make it a story. Let's say the hiring manager asks, how do you handle it when you don't know the answer?
Well, just the other day, a customer needed this very specific type of hinge. Antique cabinet door hinge, and I had no idea.
Okay, you've set the scene. You're invested now.
So my task is to find this hinge info. I'd explain that I checked our supplier catalogs, even called a few colleagues who specialize in older hardware.
And the result. Hopefully, a happy customer with a perfectly hinged antique cabinet.
See, you never know when those obscure DIY stories will come in handy. And this is where RoleCatcher's feedback is great. You can practice this story, and the AI will tell you if you're, like, using too many ums or whatever.
It's like having a speech coach on call.
Okay, we've covered a lot, but we can't forget the human element. Interviewers want to see your passion, that you're not just there for the paycheck. How do you convey that genuine love for all things hardware and paint.
It often comes out in those simple questions like, what trends in the industry are you excited about?
And you don't need to memorize every new tool or paint type, right?
It's more about your curiosity. Maybe you geek out over new eco-friendly paint strippers or the latest cordless nailers. Whatever it is, let that excitement show.
It's even better if you can connect it to yourself. Like, I've been trying out those new air-drying clay paints for my sculptures, and
There you go.
shows you're not just reading about it, you're into it. Passion is contagious. Speaking of things that can be contagious, let's talk about constructive criticism. How do you answer that question in a way that doesn't make you sound, thin-skinned?
Nobody loves criticism, but it's about showing you can learn and grow.
So when a hiring manager asks, tell me about a time you received constructive criticism, what's the best approach?
Focus on the positive. Talk about a time you got feedback, really listened, and used it to improve. Maybe a coworker showed you a faster way to stock shelves or...
Or you realized you were explaining something in a way that confused customers, so you adjusted.
Exactly. Doesn't have to be a huge thing, just an example of taking feedback and running with it.
And this is actually something RoleCatcher can help with too, right? The resume builder can analyze your work history and suggest ways to show you're coachable.
It's like having a career counselor and a copywriter in one.
Yeah.
Very handy.
Okay, we've got a few more questions to cover before we wrap up this interview prep marathon. All right, we're back. We've made it to the final stretch of our hardware and paint specialist interview prep. We've talked about skills, experience, even how AI can give us an edge. But now it's time to talk about you.
It's easy to get lost in the resume bullet points, but at the end of the day, you're not a robot. You bring something unique to the table.
So true. And that brings us to a question that often trips people up. Why this role? Why hardware and paint specialist? It's not enough to just say, because I need a job.
Right. It's about connecting with the interviewer on a personal level. What's your story?
Exactly. Did you grow up helping your grandpa in his workshop? Did you discover a passion for woodworking in college? Let that enthusiasm shine through.
Passion is contagious, and it makes you memorable. Now, here's another question that often throws people. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Ah, yes. The
Oh.
dreaded 5-year plan. I used to think you needed this super specific answer, but it's really about showing you're ambitious and you want to grow, right?
Yeah. Exactly. You don't need to have every promotion mapped out. Just talk about your desire to learn new things, take on more responsibility, contribute to the company's success.
So a good answer might be, in 5 years, I see myself as a trusted expert in this department, maybe even mentoring new employees.
Perfect. You've shown ambition and a commitment to the company. Okay, ready for a tough one. What are some areas where you think you could improve?
Oh, I hate this question. But dodging it just makes you look like you're not being honest, right?
Exactly. The best approach is to choose something relevant to the job but not mission critical. And then talk about how you're already working on it.
Turning a weakness into an opportunity for growth. So for example, I'm really trying to improve my knowledge of plumbing. I've been watching tutorials online and even taking apart that old faucet in my basement,
There you go. Shows you're self-aware and proactive.
which are qualities any employer would love. And speaking of things employers love, well, we've talked a lot about RoleCatcher today.
And for good reason. Whether you're crafting your resume, practicing interview answers, even researching different companies, RoleCatcher can help.
It's like having a personal career assistant powered by AI right in your pocket.
And that brings us to the end of our hardware and paint specialist interview deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground today, from understanding the role to mastering those tricky interview questions. But most importantly, we've given you the tools and confidence to go out there and ace that interview.
So go get them, show them what you're made of. And remember, even if this one doesn't work out, every interview is a learning experience.
You got this. Good luck out there.